Hey everybody, Jim from Tech 11. Good morning. Well, it's morning here. Well, maybe just a little bit afternoon. Anyway, today we're going to do some RAM overclocking on my bench system that I'm building here, and we're doing it on this motherboard, which is an Asus ROG Strix Z490E Gaming. It has Crucial Ballistic. Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro, DDR4, 32 gig of RAM, 3200 megahertz. So we're going to overclock it. And right now there's just a placeholder CPU, so it's an i3-10100 in here. Although I am debating on what to buy. I'm going to change it. It's either 10600 or 11600K, 10600K or 11600K. I do like to use the K chips with Intel because they're binned and they're overclockable. They're unlocked. So that's why I like to use the K chips. Although the i3-10100, I think it's a great chip. There is another placeholder in here, which is a GTX 970 Ti, 980 Ti, 6 gig card. Although this motherboard is getting an RX 580, 8 gig card. So anyway, we're gonna. Oh yes, and I'm going to turn on comments because I figured out that I had it made for children. If you make it for children, then there's no commenting. So this one won't be for children, although will be for children, but it won't be. So that way you can comment. I'd like to hear opinions on the 10600 versus the 11600K. I have checked on this motherboard. It would pair better with a 10600K than 11600K, but half a dozen of one, six of the other. I'll take people's opinions on that, on what you go with. Anyway, so let's boot this thing up. And we'll see. So there's 1 terabyte NVMe in here. And it is a... Hang on, I'm going to find out. It's a Crucial. Yes, a Crucial P5 Plus, 1 terabyte NVMe, and that's all I install. When I install Windows, I only hook up one drive, and then I'll hook up the other drives later. So it'll get it also a 1 terabyte or 960 gigabyte SSD also, and perhaps this. I think this is a. This is a 1 terabyte Seagate, which I might put in also. Well, we'll see. See when I get there and what my build cost is. Okay, so we're booted into Windows here. And I'm way over here. Because, of course, you know, nothing is edited. And I'm using my iPad. But we're going to go back into the BIOS. So I'm just going to reboot. And of course, as always, I'll wait for the lovely beep so I don't have to mash the delete key. This is AKA BuildZoid. Like I said, I love his RAM overclocking videos, and I've watched a lot of them. He's taught me a lot. But this is going to be a 24/7 stable overclock. There we go. And we're on the wrong screen. Okay, I gotta move you. We're on the other monitor. My apologies. So we'll just slide this over that way. And there you are. Yeah, that'll work. he thinks that will work. All right. Yeah, it's a little crooked. That's okay, because it'll work. So this is the main screen when you get into a BIOS, and usually if you just F7, it's going to bring you to, oh, sorry, that is the main screen when you get into the BIOS. I have it set to go to the whatever expert mode or whatever. So if I press F7 here, you can see my core voltage there. We'll just go over this is up here, 1.279. So I have increased the voltage a little bit. I have 32 gig of RAM on here. BIOS is the latest version for this motherboard. There's the i3-10100, so it runs at 3.6 gigahertz. I have it running at, 4.1, 4.2. So if I press F7 here, it's going to take me to this screen where I've got everything across the top. So we'll see the way I have this configured now. This is my my bus at 100 megahertz, which is default. I don't change that. I don't like frontside bus overclocking because it basically overclocks everything else too. So it's a little more difficult to do. Multi-core enhancements. Like I say, it's an i3-10100, so I do things a little bit differently in here. But you can go auto, you can let BIOS optimize it. You can I don't know what limits you're enforcing, whether those are CPU limits or motherboard limits, and I just remove all limits. And this, I was just playing with this SVID behavior. Not really sure what it is, but I have it set to trained. So under trained, it says programs the CPU SVID behavior based on CPU's quality. Default is based on typical scenario, but the more optimistic the mode selected, the lower the temperature of the CPU. Intel's failsafe is the default behavior of the processor, oblivious to the actual motherboard designed. Trained, which is what I'm using, trained optimizes SVID behavior to match input parameters such as VRM load line and target frequencies. So that's how I have it set. I sync all cores on here, and you can see I have it set at 43. So its default auto would be, it defaults its 3.6 gigahertz processor. It will not boost to, it will not all core to 43. It only all cores to 41, but it does allow me to, that's as high as I can go, is 43. As you can see, I'm already set at 3600. And let's go back up here. Yeah, I don't, I'm not using XMP at all. I'm just set manually. These are my present timings that I have, but we'll go over those after and I'll show you. Where do I have this set? Okay, I'm on level 4 for my load line calibration. And like I said, this is a non-K chip. So this is all manually, most of it is manually adjusted. Some of it I don't touch because, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing in that respect. So don't want to touch too much. But my current capability, I set at 150%. My VRM switching frequency at 500, and that's totally adjustable up to, or am I maxed out? I'm maxed out on it. And I just pressed the escape key to get back. I haven't done much in here at all because it's not a K chip, and I have set my my uncore ratio to 40 from a default of 38. I'm going to say, or what is it lower than that? And because I have that raised up, and I have tested stability and it's fine. My core voltage, I'm running 1.29. My DRAM is running at 1.4. And the reason I'm running 1.4, XMP would be 1.35, is because I have this overclocked to 3600. 100% stable, by the way, at 3600. VCC, whoops, do that a lot. VCC IO voltage and system agent, so I have those raised a little bit because I'm running my Uncore a little bit higher, and they're also for memory overclocking. I haven't really changed much here. I think I'm maybe running my I'm running under profile 2. So I'm just going to save that profile and escape again. And that'll get us back up to the top so we can go across. Okay, let's auto this thing out. Actually, just for the memory. All we're going to do is the memory. So we're going to set this at auto. We'll auto the voltage. And I'll just leave everything alone. We'll save this. Now, the great thing about this board is how well it trains. It's really good at, so you know, with the postcode code readers. Fantastic. Yeah, so we went auto on the frequency, so we'll just reboot here. Okay, so we're back at running at 2133. And you can see that right here, 2133. So nothing's changed there. And we haven't changed any of our CPU settings. Okay, so let's change our frequency here. And I'll show you how, after we do this, how our board trains. So we have 3200 megahertz RAM. So normally I would go up to 33. I would loosen the timings, but I'm going to show you that. And I do it in increments as we move our way up. I wonder if it changed my timings. No, they're still the same, because we didn't change anything in there. And we'll just change our voltage back to what it was. I think we were at 1.4. Maybe I'll just load my profile. Much easier. Actually, no, I won't load my profile because I might have changed some. Oh no, I saved it. That's right. Load from profile 2, and yes. Okay. So we'll go back here again. Let's go to our, so these are our RAM timings. So I believe this is a kit of 16, 18, 18 at 3200 megahertz. So the first thing I do actually is I loosen them a lot, like 20, 22, 44. Or 2020. Actually, I think with this kit I started at 2028, 56, and then I moved down from there as I increased the speed of the RAM, and I increased the voltage. But I'll start at 1.4 volts. You can probably go as high as 1.45, but I wouldn't go above that for a daily driver. I like 1.4. And then we find where we're going to boot. Now, if you've got a different motherboard, you might have to, and it doesn't train very well, you might have to reset the BIOS. So you get everything as loose as you can when you're going up in speed. So that way it will boot most of the time. And then I slowly lower these timings. So these are my primaries. And the secondaries I start to lower also. But when I start, everything is on auto. All of it is on auto. So anything you see a number in here, it's because I have adjusted them. It takes me about a day to tweak all of my timings. So when I'm first starting to overclock and I'm increasing my frequency, that's when I just set everything on auto. And I let the board. And then from there, then I start to adjust my timings. I only do 2 at a time, usually. Once I get my... So I leave everything on auto except the primaries. So the primaries I slowly lower and then keep rebooting. And if it keeps rebooting, and then I'm somewhat stable, I can go there. Then I start lowering my secondary and tertiary timings. Sorry about that. And then I start lowering these secondary and tertiary. So these are the tertiary timings, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So anything that's on auto I haven't touched. And everything else I have adjusted. So so I can show you how this board might train. Let's just see. So we're at 3600. Up. Let's just see if we can run. Let's try 4,000 megahertz. And we're going to save that. And I'll show you how this board trains. It's so good. So right now it's going through the postcodes. And it's actually gonna try and train. It won't, because I've already tried it. We're asking me now. I could try 1.45 volts, but yeah, I'm not going to. So you hear the change in the sound of the fan. I have it set to try 3 times to train at this speed, or the timings, either one. And it's not going to. So we'll see what screen comes up here. So down here you can see that the system is posted in safe mode, and it's asking me to press F1 to run setup. So it basically couldn't do 4,000 megahertz. So we'll go back to our AI overclock tweaker. Go back to 3600, where we were. F10 to save that, and OK. All right, back in the window. So after you do this overclock, you got to test the stability of your memory. I use a number of programs to do that. I use MaxMem2 just to test the speed. I'll use Limpack, Ada under the memory test. And there's a, oh God, I can't remember the name of the program here, but it's in here. I'll just bring this over to this side. So this is a memory test program. Let this run for a few hours, and there should be no errors. If there's an error, then you need to adjust either your timings or your RAM speed. And that's it. It's a long process. It takes a long time, but it's worth it when you can buy 3200 megahertz memory and just have it overclocked to 36. There's no issues with it. There's no problem with it. You're not going to shorten the life of your RAM. And if you do shorten it by a month or two, 15 years down the road, I think you're going to have a new computer by then. So anyway, I'm going to shut down, and I'm going to show you the postcode and how that works. And just exit that. Okay, so I'll turn you around here. There we go. We should be able to see the postcode. I'll move these out of the way. Oh my God, the way I have to wrangle things to get things to fit when I'm using the iPad. It's not the easiest thing in the world. Whoops, sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to reboot. Whoops, it didn't detect my keyboard. Why, I don't know. There. Okay, so we're back in the Windows. Just going to check something here. Mainly my keyboard. And it's functioning correctly now. Every once in a while you have to, typical USB. All right, so let's try I'll bring it back to 4000 megahertz again, and you'll see how the postcode reader works. You know, what it's doing, how it's trying to train. So let's just restart here. And then we'll hit the delete key so we can get back into the BIOS. Okay, we're back in the BIOS. And I'm going to raise my memory speed. Let's see if we can do 3866. We'll go as high. Now we're not adjust. If I wanted to go up this high, I would really loosen out my timings even more and then start all over again. But for this case, we're just going to show you how the postcode reader. It shouldn't boot at this. So I'm saving my changes, and we're going to reboot. And you can see how it's trying to train the RAM. Now perhaps at looser timings, I could get it trained. And I did. I was able to boot into Windows, but I just couldn't achieve any stability. Would have taken me another 2 days. If you're looking for a motherboard, and you know, buy one with a postcode reader. They're just so damn handy to have. I do have one that I use in a PCI slot, which works fine too. So it couldn't train. So I'm going to get that F1 to enter the BIOS, which I just did. This is what's nice about it, because I haven't had to touch the motherboard. I haven't had to reset the BIOS with the jumper. I have other boards that are supposed to do that, but don't. So we'll set it back at 36. Yeah, so some of the other boards which are supposed to go through the training and attempt to do it 3 times, they don't. So yeah, that sucks. And we're going to boot back into Windows. And I'll throw you back up here. Whoops, I'm going to have to turn you around here. And get this a little bit better. There you go. Okay. All right. So that's it takes a long time to overclock memory, about a day, but it is worth it. And I could go a little further with this memory, but I know it's 100% stable, 3600 megahertz. I'm okay with that. Especially on Ryzen, it would be great. On Intel, you know, if I bought 3600 megahertz, I could probably get it up well above 4 stable. But couple of programs. This one is a really good program, Specky. If you want to get the specs of your system, it'll come up. The only one, this one, it reports the graphics card incorrectly. The RAM on the graphics card, because it is 6 gig, and it reports it as 2, which is weird. But that's a really good program. Another one, of course. Let's do, is Cinebench going to run on this side? Yeah, another one is MaxMem. That's another program I use. And this just tests your memory speed, your latency. You can use Ada for that also. So I kind of use them both back and forth. I run this a few times before I log it. The results are close, but not always the same all the time. So it gives you your speed, gigabytes per second, read, write, copy, and your latency. And then we've got Ada. And we can do that down here. Where we do each individually. Yeah, so this is trial version. Pretty good latency at 54.2. And that's where you're going to, when you're overclocking, your latency will end up getting really high because you auto everything, right? So that's what it trains at, but it can do better than that, and that's when you adjust your secondary and tertiary timings, or your secondary and third timings on some motherboards, as they say. So that's when you adjust that. In order to improve your latency. So those are a couple of programs that I also use on a regular basis. Is Msi Afterburner. Although a lot of times I don't use it for overclocking. I more so use it for the fans, because these cards, they try and keep them as silent as possible. And I guess I'm not a... Oh, I don't have any settings saved in here on this one. So I usually just adjust the fans on here. You see, I do have my own fan profile. And then a lot of times I'll just adjust the sliders all the way up to the top. Enable that. So this starts with Windows. It just gives me a few more frames per second. Which is decent. So I don't usually adjust my voltages in there at all. I don't play with that stuff too much. I have in the past, which is fine. And then you can test with even Heaven Benchmark is a good test for it. And the reason it's a good test is it doesn't crash the whole system. It just crashes the benchmark. And we'll just run that benchmark so you can see it. It's an older benchmark, but it serves its purpose. So don't be afraid to attempt RAM overclocking or graphics card overclocking. Just don't be stupid about it. You know, don't ram 1.6 volts or 1.7 volts into your RAM. Let Buildzoid do that. He's getting that stuff for free. Well, some of it he buys. I don't want to say he doesn't buy some of his stuff, because he does. But you know, same with your CPU. Don't ram a pile of voltage into it, and you'll be fine. Be very careful. Don't go up in huge increments. Go up slowly. Or you can start at the top with your memory too. You can decide that, okay, my max is going to be 1.42, 1.43 volts. Start there, see what you can get out of that. And then you can lower, you can slowly, once you get stable and you adjust your timings, then you can maybe lower that voltage a tick, 1 or 2 ticks, and go with less voltage and still be stable. So I did contact MSI yesterday because my previous video talked about the bug in the X570 motherboard, the Gaming Edge Wi-Fi, that I just came across by happen chance, because I am an overclocker, and I was overclocking the 5900X, and I just, for the life of me, I couldn't get that damn thing stable. But I did find a bug in the BIOS, because I went back to just normal PBO settings, nothing overclocked, but I set my voltage manually, because I don't like the voltage they put into the CPU. I consider it to be a little bit too high, so I set my voltage manually. And it automatically transfers that voltage over onto another page, which is the system, is it system? Anyway, it's onto another page, and it's under AMD overclocking. It transfers the voltage, whatever you put on the main page, it transfers it over there. And when you go boot in the Windows and you just run Cinebench, it doesn't boost. Go back in. Normally that voltage is set at 0 in the overclocking, AMD overclocking section. So I reset it back to 0, and sure enough, it boosts again. I replicated this 5 or 6 times with exactly the same results every time. So I contacted MSI, I talked to them about it. I told them they could watch my channel where I have actually shown it on the screen, and how the system reacts to that. So I welcomed them to watch the video, and then, you know, I gave them my full name. I threw in the fact that I have a tech channel. If they want to send me any motherboards to test, please do. I'm sure they won't, but anyway, it would have been a very difficult bug for anybody to find, especially when you just wouldn't have gone there. You wouldn't have thought that it would make a difference having the voltage transfer over, or having that as 0 in AMD overclocking. But anyway, I found it, I informed them, I told them where the video was if they want to watch it, so they could replicate, or they could try and replicate it themselves, and we'll see what comes of it. This is almost done, and there we go, 206.2 frames per second. I think this, yeah, see, this also reads it as 4 gig of RAM, which is really weird, because the sticker on the card actually is 6 gig. GPU Z shows it as 6 gig. Specky shows it as 2 gig. Unigene Heaven Benchmark shows it as 4 gig. Quite odd. All right, let's get out here, and then I'll turn you around and all right. Close close this. Turn you around to look at my ugly mug. There we go. Get that out of the way. Yeah, the things I go through to do a YouTube video. Also, now that I have commenting turned on, somebody can tell me what I need to do to stop using my iPad to do this stuff. Like, what kind of hardware do I need to stream properly? What kind of programs? Yeah, I guess I have to hook up a separate computer. I'm fine with that, just to run that. But yeah, so I need some information on that because, yeah, I have no clue how to do that. So let me just move some of my stuff here. Ugh. All right. And nice pipes in the background. Woo-hoo. There we go. Yeah, they haven't gone out of view. Anyway, that's kind of a basics of overclocking your RAM. First thing you want to do is overclock your CPU, get it stable, completely stable. So instability is not just a blue screen. Instability can be weird things happening in Windows, but the system is working, but odd little things. That's instability also. So you need to find, get your CPU overclock stable before, once it's fully stable, then move on to the RAM and overclock your RAM. Yeah, and then you'll be, and don't forget to overclock on Intel, overclock your Uncore, which is the one that I showed, because it can, we're all focusing on the CPU and what we have set there for our multiplier and how many gigahertz we're running, and we think it's that when it can easily, if you overclock the Uncore. But the Uncore I would do afterwards also. So leave it at auto to start, and then afterwards, after you get your CPU stable, then start overclocking the Uncore. Raise it up, a couple ticks, and see if it's still completely stable. So it takes some time to do that. And watch your temperatures. I like to, on Verizon, I like to stay low 80s, mid 80s at the most. On Intel, high 80s, low 90s, but all core. That's as high as I want to go. I don't want to go much more than that. Because this environment down here is, I don't know what environments my systems are going into, so I always leave a little bit of room there, because somebody might stick the computer on a carpet. Well, I'd never do that. I'm not sure what the environment is more than likely totally different. So one thing about being in the basement is there's no static here, number one, but it is cool. And especially, living that's the computers in Manitoba are awesome in the winter because they're already cold, regardless of the heat in the house. So yes, depending, your overclock is going to have, and how high you can go is going to have something to do with where you live also. So we are at 44 minutes. That's a long one. Put on my glasses here. That's a long one for this. But if I don't want to discourage anybody from overclocking, because you shouldn't be discouraged at all. With Intel by a K chip, every AMD is overclockable. I find the Intels will overclock higher because they are specifically binned and they are K chips, whereas AMD, you'd be lucky to get all core at the turbo frequency, probably 100 megahertz below that, unless you won the silicon lottery. So you'll probably get 100 megahertz below that on most, if not all, AMD Ryzens on an overclock. But that's an all core, right? Because you're not just boosting, you're boosting every core, not just one core. My 5900X will boost to 4.9 gigahertz on one core. One or two core, one core actually, not even two cores. And when I did have it overclocked, I had it overclocked to 4.3 or 4.4 gigahertz. But once again, it wasn't completely stable, so I've gone back to PBO and adjusted that now so that when I do change my voltage on my main screen, I go into the AMD overclocking screen and set it back to 0. So that does boost, but it just doesn't need to be overclocked. Some of the high-end AMD CPUs, they just don't need to be overclocked. They're fast enough. 12 cores, 24 threads, they're fast enough. The Intels, they overclock really nicely. I have 3 Intels out the door that are over 5 gigahertz. All K chips. So yeah, they're I find them easier to overclock. They're very, it doesn't take a long time to get them stable at all. So they're good overclockers. Once again, you have to watch your temperatures. You have to watch your voltage. Same with RAM. Be careful with your voltage. Temperature shouldn't be an issue with RAM at all. And it boots or it doesn't. And get a motherboard with a postcode reader. And a motherboard, hopefully you'll get, I got lucky with this board because it trains beautifully. Otherwise if you're overclocking RAM, you're going to increase your time if you have to reset the BIOS all the time on a bad overclock. So make sure you save your profiles constantly. You get a good profile, go in there, save it first, then adjust your timings. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Jim from Tech Lovin'. Have a great day. I'm not going to turn off comments on here, so if you have any comments, go ahead. Feel free to comment, and let me know what you think about the 10600, 11600K thing, and which route I should go. Because eventually I'm gonna have to. I've had this i3 10100 forever, so I got to put it in something eventually. I just don't want it to stay in this board. I'm gonna put it in a lower end board. Yeah, instead of this one. Anyway, have a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye bye.